So much really is going on from Owerri right on to Ebonyi. So that's why you see the vice president paying a visit to Ebonyi State. But we'll come to all of that. But remember, we also did talk about the health sector, the medical doctor strike in our opening sequence, if you did catch it. So just to follow up, has there been any meetings? What is going on? Any hope in sight to end the strike for those who do have doctor's appointments or who may intend? Nobody plans to be sick anyway, so anything can happen. So we'll have Dr. Oyelawa Okoyesuyi, the president of NARD, joining us on the line this morning to give us an update on what is going on. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So there's really a concern out there at the moment concerning what is going on. So could you give us the latest picture? Is there a meeting scheduled? Any hope in sight?
Good morning. As it stands, we have not had any invite from the Ministry of Labour. And we are not surprised because it has always been the antics of government to come to the studio and say plenty of promises and tell us they have done this and done that. But as it stands, as of this morning, we have not had any invite from the Ministry of Labour. And the strike still continues on the 6th. And they make the 6th day of the strike action.
There isn't any backstory as to whether or not there's going to be subsequent meetings from the perhaps not being on the same page about an MOA, should it be an MOU? No latest communication whatsoever?
The consequences of the MOA, MOTOS, and Memorandum of Actions have already failed. As you can see, when we signed the MOA, stating that we are going back to the NEC members to consider the situations on ground. As it stands, the House officers have still not been paid, even when we were told they'll be paid from the next day. The ones paid were paid half salaries, or ranging from 33,000 to 60,000. Nothing else has been done as it stands. So we call on Nigerians to also please help us talk to the government, because it seems that they really don't put the health of the nation as a priority. They need to calm down to know what is happening with them. Although we have, due to the Honorable Speaker of the House, Amela, we know we are going to meet with Honorable Blanco Sinono on the 8th, which is on Thursday. So that's the only scheduled meeting we have now with the government. Understand?
Were there timelines set within the memorandum of memorandum of action that was signed with the federal government? Were there timelines to which of the items? You've talked about the pay that was supposed to be within a particular timeline. Were there timelines to the items on the list, and which of them has any needle even moved on?
The timeline for the payment of house officers under the quota system has been extended. They said that it was going to be paid within 3 days before the MOU and after the MOU. The other timeline was given for 4 weeks for the other members of the excess house officers that were not among the quota system. And those still, the timeline was 4 weeks. Like the timeline of the paid residents under the Gate 6 platform for 4 to 5 weeks. As it stands, nothing apart from the abolishment of the bench fee have been achieved by government.
One other question that one would be willing to ask you is, knowing, just as you said, knowing government and all of that, is there a middle ground that NARD would say, if certain conditions are met, we can go back to work and hope that government will meet others within a particular time frame? Is there a middle ground that people can expect that at this middle ground or at this point, the NARD is willing to make some concessions?
The National Executive Council are the ones that asked the National Officers Committee to proceed on this strike. And the order given by the NEC members is that till all the demands on the communique are met, we continue a total and indefinite strike. As it stands today, apart from 1/13, none have been met. And we need to go meet our next members to give any other directive. But I know as the leader of the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, a mandate has been given to me to continue the strike until the 13 demands are met. So the strike continues as it stands.
Okay, Doctor, seeing that memorandum of action, because the Minister of Health, or rather the Minister of Labour, had spoken about the memorandum of action, saying that, well, signatures were put on that memorandum of action. In fact, just right on top of your name at the last page, page 4, you have Dr. Okwayesu Uilawa, NARD president, and his signature just right on top of it. And he's wondering that, I mean, in labor practices, in usual practice, once something like this comes up, all parties are meant to at least go back and wait for those timelines to be met. And then if that is not met, then they can now say, well, you failed to fulfill your promise, then we're going back, or at least we're down tooling. So that's the picture the minister painted. So the question will be, why append your signature, or at least your representatives appending the signature to this MOA if you didn't agree with those timelines that were put there?
The National Executive Council will take the report back to the National Executive Council to determine if and consider if the strike will be called off. And also, if you go to the part that were signed, you attest to me that over three people did not sign. The IP director did not sign. The MDCN director did not sign. The PAMSEC signed on behalf of the Labour Minister. So if we are truthful to ourselves, we know that the MOA does not demand that we call off the strike. Only the NEC members can determine whether the strike will be called off or not. Not even me as the president.
Item 4 on that MOA that speaks about hazard allowance. It says consultation on this issue is ongoing. The meeting agreed, now that's talking about all the participants at the meeting. The meeting agreed that a maximum of 5 weeks should be given in order for all stakeholders to converge to discuss the new hazard allowance rate. So that was an item, and it said that everybody agreed to that, and that was followed by a signature, which you said it was just signed by one person as opposed to the 3 other representatives. So that was an agreement. Am I right?
Agreement is that the next will be called. First, for the hazard allowance, we didn't start communicating with the government concerning the 5,000 naira that is paid for hazard allowance now. We started negotiations of that since over 8 months ago. On the 25th of February, a letter came from the Ministry of Labour stating that stakeholders will be called to sit down and discuss the other allowance and find ways to prevent brain drain. That was 25th of February. Today is the 6th of April. What happened between the timeline from 25th of February till now? What happened between the timeline between last year, 8 months ago till now? Those are the questions we should ask. We'll be given the timeline now that in so and so time, in 4 weeks, a meeting will be conveyed when we decide to now call off the strike and the government goes to sleep. The government has gone to sleep on several occasions, not in 2014, 2016, 2017, and even 2020. And now we are back to memorandum of actions, even when the actions have failed from the onset. So those are the big questions we're asking the government on how sincere they are with their memorandum of understanding they asked us to sign when they did not even fulfill the list of them all.
Because, Doctor, I'm sure you understand how important communication and the wordings, the terms that are used are in such, industrial dispute. Because item 2 that talks about abolishment of the bench fee says it was agreed, yet again the term agreed, it was agreed that the policy should be abolished, because I know that's been a major bone of contention, following due process to be initiated by the Federal Ministry of Health through the National Council on Health. During the transition period, CMDs should waive this payment. So for that item, has there been any action from the CMDs or those concerned?
At this time, no circular has been passed on that. There are so many circulars and so many promises or MOUs that have been signed before, and they are not followed to that. Because the CMDs will tell you that they have not gotten any circular to potentiate what has been agreed on. So that's why we say we agree that, yes, with all the demands on the communique, we said that we have achieved one, which is the abolishment of the bench fee. But we need circulars to back it up. That when any resident goes to any institution that is he or she is supposed to have training, you won't be embarrassed by the management when they tell you that you have to wait for when the bench fee is all paid before you be given a supervisory for your project.
So it will also seem that the NARD has some work to do in this whole process, because the third item, which speaks about non-payment of national minimum wage consequential adjustment arrears, says that NARD should immediately submit list of affected institutions in order for it to be captured in the 2021 supplementary budget. The arrears should be from April 2019 to December 2019. So basically saying that the NARD should also present some information. Has that been done?
Last week. We have submitted list for all house officers, which is 2,136. We have submitted list for the resident doctors on under gift mix, which the Honorable Minister said that the list should not come from us, but rather come from the chief medical directors. We have a list of all those residents that were erroneously paid during the MRTF, which accounts for about 558. 58, which also we wrote down to the government since December last year. And up to now, the erroneously paid members who are asking an account to be given to them nothing have been done about that. We have tried in all means to try and do our part as a union and as a responsible union. That's why we're calling on government to also do their own part. We are supposed to be doctors attending to patients in the hospital, not becoming admin staffs that tend to now want to compile list of those that have died, list of residents that have erroneously paid, list of residents in training, list of house officers that are not paid. Everybody should bear their responsibilities, not make us do things that we're not supposed to do in order to make the system work. The system fails because there are no consequences for any actions not done. And that is why we're actually asking the government to make consequences to happen. If the MDCN registrar fails to do his job, he should be sacked. If the chief medical director fails to do their job, they should be sacked. If those in the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labour fail to do their work, they should be sacked. There should be consequences. And not making doctors, health workers, to go do jobs that are not delegated to them.
One wonders, because when we had this conversation with the president of the NMA, he says they are doing some work in the background on this matter. Are you satisfied with the intervention of the NMA and other organizations, other bodies working in the background to at least resolve some of the issues being raised?
Yes, I will tell you that the NMA president has been a father and a mentor, and he has done everything to help support an affiliate in name of Nigerian resident doctors and other affiliates. And they have directed us on the ways and how we can engage government in getting the best for all doctors and all health workers in Nigeria. So I say a big thank you to the president and Professor Uja, MNI, who have done well in staying the leadership of the health sector forward.
In all of those demands, I mean, is there any updates from that of Abia as well? I know that was part of your demands.
Yeah, we had an invite by the governor of Abia State to come and sit down with them on Friday, which we will still look up to. But however, we call on all meaningful Nigerians to please help us engage the governor to help pay the 20 months salary of those staffs and workers there, to help improve on the infrastructures that are present there, to help make resident training to work in Abia Absolute. So those are part of the things we are begging government and all meaningful Nigerians to help us also to communicate with the governor. And we also want to call on the governor of Imo State to also please implement and make residency work in IMSUT. It will go a long way in service delivery to all patients and to Nigeria in general.
Oh, okay. But You know, in all of these things, I know that normally you expect at least a lot of these demands to be met when that happens. But from the look of things, if there hasn't been that kind of response as you would want, does that suggest that NARD will have no option than to dig their heels in and be on this strike for however long it takes?
The directive of the National Executive Council is that you make this a strike that ends other strikes in Nigeria. If we are able to get this right, we don't need to go on any strike. All we need to do is to tell government to please provide the basic infrastructures, provide the basic insurance for all the health workers, provide a better housing allowance for all members, provide a working, enabling environment for us to work. If we do that, we'll be able to concentrate our work and our desires to making the patients get good treatment, making the country get good health, and making the economy to grow well. The health of a nation also helps to make the economy grow. And if we tend to do send our priorities right, it's a way of helping Nigerians to get the best care in Nigeria and stay in Nigeria and avoid medical tourism.
Been at this for decades, trying to get the Nigerian health sector to the level which we believe it should be. And I'm talking decades. I mean, grueling decades, decades after decades. We keep seeing strike actions, and we keep saying we ought to be better than this. We keep seeing doctors move out of the country. I recall on Sunday Politics, you were speaking about the possibility of getting the EFCC and maybe the ICPC involved in this sector, just to look into what is wrong. But from your own dealings, I mean, back and forth with the government, what is the main challenge really with the health sector? Because like I said, the Minister of Labor and Productivity is a medical doctor. The Minister of Health, of course, is a medical doctor. We're in an era that the health sector is like the #1 because of COVID-19. So what exactly is the challenge here?
Well, the minister said that about 13.9 billion was invested into the insurance for all health workers. And I know that for a fact that over the years, there have been insurance companies that have been used to bid for the insurance of all health workers. But what comes to bear in all this is that for over 5 years, they have none that have benefited from any of these benefits. So that's why we're asking the big question, where did the money go to? Because first of all, we should have a list of all insurance companies that bid for the group life insurance. We should have a certificate for all health workers that have been insured. Those are ways of trying to help us get the best and have the way to do confidence in government to say we have been insured. Those are the right questions we're asking. That's why they need to be investigated. And that's why we need to know who is involved, how much is involved, where have the money gone to, how much payments have been done for any health worker that have been in the system. Those are the big questions we're asking. Not just coming on air and saying figures when we cannot substantiate what has been done. Is there a certificate of insurance for any health worker? Where has the certificate been presented to? Where can we assess it? Those are the big questions I ask. And those are the big questions we are all asking to the government.
The question that my colleague asked, well, you have responded concerning the recent issues. But when we backtrack to decades, it's the medical workers have gone on strike or taking such actions as you're taking now, not only on the welfare of their members, they've taken action based on some infrastructural challenge, especially in the health sector, over the decades, just as Coyote has said. And you also remember that very recently, the chairman of PTF COVID-19 said, we have a huge deficit in health infrastructure in Nigeria. So if you were to itemized? Because when you say that you're looking to end all strikes permanently in Nigeria, I'm wondering, is there in any way connected to the possibility of having an improved infrastructural provision in the health sector? Because unless that one comes up, I wonder if we're still not going to have another indefinite strike.
As you know, since the COVID-19 has exposed the deficiencies, the dilapidated state of the hospitals and the health sector generally. And if those in government in charge of the health sector have a roadmap, a plan for the health system in Nigeria, they should be able to know that improving the health sector, better infrastructures, better welfare packages, better leadership, it goes a way to make people work more. If you find a conducive environment like we found abroad, that's been one of the causes of brain drain, better insurance, better security, you're not scared of being kidnapped. Because not only all health workers, like University of Port Harcourt, University of Calabar, are like prey to kidnappers. Better security. Those are ways you can make the health system work. If you have a functional MRI, a functional CT scan, a functional radiotherapy, those are ways you can make health workers have job satisfaction. Job satisfaction is one of the attributes you can give to any health worker to want to put him into our own best. If you add that as one of the topmost priority, I believe that most health workers will want to stay in Nigeria to give their best. If you bring a functional housing scheme with a loan, a one-digit loan, health workers as the national resident doctors is doing, those are ways to encourage health workers from staying. If you give them a loan for cars to get houses, those are ways of preventing brain drain. So that's what we call on government to do ways and do actions that will make all health workers begin in the system, want to serve more and want to deliver more to the system. And that will prevent ways of brain drain, will prevent ways of medical tourism, and all health workers will want to be patriotic and stay in their country to give the best deliveries to all.
This is sorted, and everyone gets back and then get the health sector back on track. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Dr. Oyulawa Okwayesi, President of NARD. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.